John, the reality is we want to do our show every week. We have to find a place to do it, and it's smack dab in the middle of the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah.
And it's going to be very hard not to talk about how the Mets got here and how at least they looked in game one and maybe set up the Yankees a little bit where they are.
Yeah. Normally we have great interview subjects here, but the subject is going to carry us here. And the Mets have played above and beyond what anyone, including myself, would have thought. And I'm anxious to talk about all the good stuff happening with the team from Queens.
Yeah, we saw one of the best games you'll ever see in Atlanta. Both of us are now in Milwaukee. As I mentioned, we'll talk about the Yankees' upcoming series, the division series. We'll play hit and error at the end. I think we'll probably take some shots at people if you stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, we've done this for a lot of years. We cover a lot of games every year. There's a lot of nondescript stuff we get through because it's part of the job. And then you get a game like the Monday opener between the Mets and the Braves. That was a little bit like a one-game playoff. It was understood that there was a second game, but just how it set everybody up for the playoffs. If you won that game with the improved chances, and man, there was a lot there. It felt like I could have written 15, 20 different angles, and it got the Mets in the playoffs. And John, I think it said a lot about the Mets, who they've been this season. You've written a lot about it, obviously, this idea of overcoming. And here they are as we're sitting doing this. They're up 1-0 over the Brewers, also in the division series. Take it wherever you want, John. From that game forward, this Met team is really gritty and really showing us something.
Yeah, I mean, I like this team to begin with, but they've certainly improved a lot. I mean, all the in-season acquisitions, I mean, they're basically batting 1,000 with those. I mean, look at Vientos has been great. Iglesias, great. Winker has helped. JD Martinez has helped. Budo has been really good, really a great debut in the playoffs last night as we do this. And I mean, in-season improvements too. I mean, Manaea has become a star. He was a good pitcher in the first half, but a great one in the second half. Severino was even better in the second half. And, they're a better team than they were to start. I mean, I was kind of taking a flyer when I said they'd be a playoff team May 18th. Now they feel like a legit playoff team, and they feel like a team that's got a shot. We got no world beaters in these playoffs, right? I mean, they could actually go to the World Series at this point, right? And maybe even win the World Series.
Yeah, John, it's an interesting thing because I agree with you. I think that there's no clear-cut favorite. The Dodgers and the Yankees are the top seeds, but both of them have issues coming into this. We didn't have a 100-win team. I wonder, though, and I get it. The Mets want to keep going. They want to have magic. They haven't won a World Series since 1986. I think this is a successful season right now. Like I think that
Yeah,
they could
you're
lose
right.
and be fine because this was the first year of an administration. And I think what happened in the first year of the administration is David Stern showed again, I know what I'm doing. I know to your point. Think of everything you just said, John. He
Yeah.
added those players or he entrusted those players and he's kept the faith. I think this is a successful season no matter what happens moving forward.
It's a successful season. I agree with you, but they better not think like that. And I
Yeah.
don't think they are thinking like that. In that clubhouse last night, I mean, they were pretty calm. They weren't celebrating. I mean, I expect cigars and a champagne with one victory when you still have work to do. But I mean, they were not like celebrating. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't like a disco in there. We're very, very professional. I think, they all, for all the good moves they did, the hiring of the manager, Mendoza, and I was a skeptic. I'm like, this is a guy who was the bench coach of a very disappointing, underachieving Yankee team, at least last year. And I mean, he's really set a great tone. I think he and Stearns are both very calm guys. And I think that is a big plus for a manager.
Yeah, John, I'm with you. And again, I'll add Mendoza to the Stearns. I think,
Yeah.
and I get it. I don't want Met fans to hear this, and I'm like, oh, Joel's okay with them losing. It's wide open. To your point, they've got a shot, but they've had multiple chances to kind of roll over and die this year. 0-5, the worst May in the sport. People asking about, are you sellers at the trade deadline? And over the last 4 months, they're pretty much the best team in the league. And
Right.
so they've got a real shot here, but. I mean, the way that doubleheader went down, they could have thrown away game one. Now, no one's just throwing away a playoff game, but They go down 2-0 and 4-3 in game one of this series. They don't have the back end of their bullpen available to them. And what a job by Severino to give them that the fifth and sixth inning in the way that Pat Murphy doesn't trust his guy, Freddie Peralta, to do it fully rested with the whole team. He tried to bullpen it through. And then the Mets, the Mets scored 5 runs against their bullpen in that first inning. Do you know how many runs the Mets scored against their bullpen all year, John? In 28 and a third innings, they scored
Not a lot.
five earned runs. In
Yeah.
28, and then in the first playoff inning, this team that kind of like has been ping-ponging between Atlanta and Milwaukee, that had to play that doubleheader, that had a champagne and cigar
Right.
thing, they showed up in game one. I think it says just great things about who this group is.
Right. Comebacks in the season and comebacks in the games that mattered. I mean, the first game to me, it's kind of a must win, although you have a second shot at it, and that doubleheader was weird. And I know Arizona was upset. They didn't like the situation. I mean, it is what
They blew
it
an
is.
8-0 lead to
I
Milwaukee
know. Well,
recently.
everybody had losses like that. I get it from their perspective, but they did lose 5 out of their last 7. So, and they recognize that. But I mean, it was a funny situation where you have the two hated teams celebrating at the end, with the champagne.
Yeah.
It was a little bit weird. It was a little bit, but give them credit. They came back in the season, not easy. They came back in the games, not easy, particularly not easy in these two places. These are two of the least favorite places of this Mets team. If you recall last year when they were supposed to be good, the expectations were high. They came to Milwaukee. I came to Milwaukee, as I always do, covered that series, and they got blown away. They didn't just lose 3 games, they got killed 3 straight games, and that set them on the course to have a terrible season. So, I mean, Milwaukee's not a great place to play, and neither is Atlanta, and they won in both places with comebacks. So a lot of positive signs. I mean, I didn't even expect this. They look great. They really do. And like I said, no world beaters. To me, I'm kind of looking at it like San Diego's the favorite at this point. To me, they got to get through Philly too, which is obviously, I think, the favorite in a lot of people's eyes. LA, you can't say he's the favorite, right? I mean, Walker Buehler has not been very good. Landon Knox, their 4th starter, right? I mean, they obviously have a good bullpen. They've got Ohtani. They got some great things, but I mean, to me, Philly and San Diego are the 2 teams you really got to get through here.
John, just to put a finer point on it, I think the Mets were 1-5 against Milwaukee this year, and the one Milwaukee just essentially handed them. And so,
they handed them the game before too, and they
yeah,
couldn't take it. Right? I mean, they threw a bullpen game, and basically, and the bullpen I know is good, but I mean, Tobias Myers, who's a starter, pitched 4 innings. They didn't do anything against him, and yeah, I mean, it's amazing how things can turn around. If you recall it, I mean, you probably do. And I was reminded in Mike Vack's column today in the 2015, the Mets didn't win a game against the Cubs in the regular season, and
then
turned it around at 4-0. And of course, we all know 1988, where the Mets were killing the Dodgers and then were eliminated by the Dodgers. So regular season, you can kind of throw out, but I mean, there's a long history of not doing well in Atlanta, and they came through in Atlanta, as you wrote.
Yeah, and I think they had lost 15 of 18 in Milwaukee. And again, one of the wins was that last game in Milwaukee. So it's kind of like 14 out of whatever. You're better with the math. I'm going to screw that up. But they've all they've done is lose in Atlanta and lose in Milwaukee. And so I think it marks a successful season. They got in when getting in was vital. They slayed beast in Atlanta. They might be in the midst of slaying beast in Milwaukee. It is such a good first step for a new administration. And it's funny, Steve Cohen was on the field the other day, and somebody said, well, after trying to walk away from it, if you do the Jon Heyman thing here and win the World Series, you will have met the mandate of winning a World Series within 3 to 5 years. And he said,
year 4.
Yeah. He said, well, in that case, I'm back, kind of thing, and he's been a presence around the team, and really, I think kind of in the best way, owning a team. He seems to be having a great time,
right,
and putting the big investment in and having a great time. And I just think look, the pressure will go up. We see it like with the Knicks. You get a couple of grace years where it's like, wow, we didn't see this coming. Well, now you got to win. I think the Mets' pressure level goes up closer to Yankee pressure levels moving forward because of what these guys showed.
Right.
But this is such a gravy year right now.
Right. And maybe they're just looking at it as loose rather than, we've already done our job. And that's the way it feels to me. And that's why I thought they would get through this, even though they weren't as good as Milwaukee through 162 games, particularly against Milwaukee. They were not good. You're right about Steve Cohen. I mean, all these bargain pickups that I talk about during the season, they have spent $341 million, which is about what they spent last year. I know some of it's on Scherzer and Verlander and stuff like that they're not using, but I mean, it's really amazing how well they spent this year. I mean, of the $1 billion he spent in player acquisition, less than 100 million is this year, right? I mean, Iglesias at 1.5 million on a minor league, non-guaranteed 1.5 million. Vientos obviously makes the minimum, 740,000. They've got some real bargains on this team that offset the earlier deals that didn't work. I think he's learned a lot. He tried hard early. He's learned a lot, and obviously he has the right man in place right now in David Stearns.
Yeah, I would say the launching point for the success this year, John, was trading Verlander and Scherzer last year, which was a tough thing
Right.
for them to do. But it kind of like, among other things, opened two rotation spots for Severino and Minaya, which I'm not sure they do if Verlander and Scherzer are still around. It brought in Acuna, who at the very least helped a lot late when
Right.
Lindor wasn't
Did.
available. So, and it was interesting because there were questions if they should do it and criticism that they did it. I think it was the right thing. And I think then it was the right thing to not sell at this. They were getting pushed a little. What were they going to do at this deadline? And I think that what happened at these two deadlines have been vital to the organization. John, can I just flip over real quickly to the Yankees? Who knows how this is going to go? But this was my thought after day one of the playoffs. The two Central Division teams won. Kansas City beat Baltimore, and Detroit beat Houston, and Cleveland is sitting as the number 2 seed. If it is the Yankees and 3 AL Central teams left in the playoffs, considering what everything has looked like from 2017 forward, where the Yankees have done nothing but kick the crap out of AL Central teams in the postseason, I didn't know it could go higher as far as like, hey, you better get to the World Series. But if it's them and 3 AL Central teams, they better get to the World Series.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, Baltimore on paper looks better than those Central teams if they're out. Yep. And Houston, obviously, they've been their nemesis. They've been their thorn. If they're out, yep. I'm with you. You got 3 Central teams to beat. It's not Minnesota, the team they kick most regularly, but they do beat Kansas City fairly regularly since I was a kid, which is quite a long time. Same with the Detroit. Used to be in their division, but beat them too. Yeah, I think the pressure goes up, and then if they don't make it, it'll be harder for Cashman and Steinbrenner to convince themselves to bring back Aaron Boone. Certainly, I think there's more pressure on Aaron Boone than anybody this offseason. I mean, Judge may be next, which is, I think, a little unfair. I mean, look at his lifetime record. He's, I think, a 780 OPS in the playoffs. I know it's not like Aaron Judge, but I mean, the numbers are expected to go down. I know they did for Jeter a little bit in October, not just that it's colder, but you're facing much better pitchers. So, I give him more of a pass than probably the fans do, but I think the most pressure of anybody facing this October is on Aaron Boone.
There's no doubt about it, because to me, he has to manage this team. And one of those decisions, John, is Carlos Rodon is going to start game 2. And as we're speaking, they have not announced who's a game 3 starter. I'll go first. I would have started Rodon in 2. And I just think there's short leashes. Again, he's going to have to manage. I would go Rodon Schmidt. That's the way I would go. How would you go here, John?
Yeah, I'm a heel supporter. I don't have the Rookie of the Year vote. He's certainly a candidate. He's had, I think, more dominating efforts, outings than any pitcher on the Yankees. I know he's had a few bad ones, but even in the games that he has struggled recently, it's usually 5 innings, 1 run. I mean, I don't think you're expecting a pitcher to throw 8 innings. Neither Schmidt nor Heel would be able to do that. I think Schmidt is very good. He's certainly a very confident fellow. To me, Heel has even better stuff. They both have great stuff, but I think Heel has even better stuff. He's a rookie, may not know what he's in here, and I'm going heel.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a flip of the coin. The walks worry me with Heel at this time of year. I do think stolen bases before it's all said and done are going to be a big story of this postseason. It felt like teams were being more and more aggressive in September, are putting speed guys on their roster and just loading the bases up with guys who might be able to run. I think is a problem. John, why don't we finish by this? Is every team is dealing with injuries right now. The Yankees have fewer than most. It looks like they're going to get Jake Cousins back for the division series, which should help their bullpen a little. But I would think it's extremely doubtful they're going to have Anthony Rizzo, at least for the division series. And I actually think Nestor Cortez is a big loss because I
Yeah,
think
me
he would have
too.
been a key guy one or two times in a series to get 6 outs, and especially against some big lefty hitters. Thoughts on the injuries as they begin here?
Yeah, I mean, Nestor Cortez, I'm with you. I mean, big Stones, the guy can do it in the postseason. I don't think there's any question, but I'm allowed to say Stones on here. I think
Yeah.
I think he's terrific in that spot. Not that I would have started him over the four starters we have mentioned, but I think he certainly could have been huge in that postseason. So that is a big loss to me. Rice is just as good a hitter as Rizzo at this point. I mean, you lose a little defensively, yes, and obviously that's big. So certainly the loss of Rizzo does hurt to a degree, but not that much because I think Rice is probably a bigger threat to hit home runs than Rizzo even at this point. And Rizzo's hit 300 something home runs. We talk about the Yankees being in relatively good shape in terms of health. So are the Mets, right? I mean, they keep asking questions about Senga. I think he's a figment of somebody's imagination. I mean, the guy threw 5 innings. They've been great without him. I think at this point we can assume he's probably not coming back, right? I keep seeing questions and I don't even listen to the answers because I think I know the answer. And McNeil's been replaced by, he was good in the second half, but he's been replaced. Iglesias now full time, which maybe he should have been anyway, right? He had 337, which is better than anybody with 260 at bats this year in all of baseball. So and Acuna, as you mentioned earlier, has been great. So both teams in good health. I mean, is there a chance we see a Subway Series? No one would have predicted that at the beginning. I certainly did not. I didn't have either team in the playoffs, at least in spring training. Eventually, I thought they'd both get in. But at this point, the Dodgers are not world beaters. The Phillies, I mean, nobody won 100 games. Anybody can get through this, right?
Yeah.
You know,
I think
I
it's
can see
I think
anything
it's what
happening.
I think it's wide open. I think it's about who plays well now for 3 weeks, who stays healthy, who gets good pitching. And by the way, it's my theme. Who plays baseball well? I know a lot of Yankee fans sometimes hear that. It's like, yeah, Yankees have a $300 million payroll. They should have it all. They should be able to throw it hard, and play well. Iglesias helped decide a game yesterday by running 90 feet as hard as he could and beating a play and triggering a 5-run inning. Were the Yankees watching?
I mean, Iglesias, amazing. I mean, Phil Mushnick always writing about the guys who don't hustle. I want to see a column on Iglesias. This guy, I mean, I don't have the stats in front of me. I want to see one of our guys at MLB Network look this up. He's got more infield hits than anybody. I mean, there are guys who are like sprinters, like Garrett Mitchell, and I mean, the Brewers have a few sprinters on the team. Iglesias is not a sprinter. I kind of said to him, some of the teammates thinks you're a little faster than you look or something insulting like that. And he said, I can move. So he can. I
He
mean,
doesn't lack for self-confidence.
no. And when I told him, what's the deal? Why have you signed 4 minor league deals in a row and you're a 280 career hitter? He corrected me and said 283. I guess he's up. The needle moves during the season. That's what I gotta look for. But 283 career hitter. It is incredible that he had to sign 4 minor league deals. I mean, JD Martinez said to me, basically, the analytics bleeped him. JD Martinez, I'm really liking him as a quote.
Yeah.
We like that kind of spicy quote.
Let's have a
Analytics
good
bleeped
clubhouse
him.
for quotes.
Oh, they got a terrific clubhouse, and that's why 90% of our guests come from the Mets. Come on, Yankees, let's go.
Oh,
Let's
no.
get some guests from the
The
Yankees.
overprivileged Yankees will not be helping us.
Anyway,
Uh,
the Mets have been great. We had, Nimmo, Lindor, Manaea,
Bader,
Bader, all the stars. And Bader, he's done
he
it
was a
twice,
Yankee
right?
when he
Once
did
he
it.
did it,
Yeah, yeah,
and we even talked about it yesterday. And he was considering it, but in the middle of a series, I mean,
yeah.
we could talk in the middle of a series, but it's bad luck. You can't do
Yeah.
that.
We're going to
Things can
stop
change.
talking here in the middle of this series.
All right.
We will come back and play Hidden Error. Stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman. John, you got a hit or error for me?
I got a hit and an error, and it all relates to Bobby Witt Jr. Obviously, we know Aaron Judge is going to win the MVP award in the American League. I'd been trumpeting Witt as a candidate up until the last few weeks. Obviously, it's no longer in doubt. Judge is the man once again. Bobby Witt Jr., there's a case. All terrific all-around player, had the RBI hit in the 1-0 victory over the Orioles. I mean, just a terrific player. And I think it was a little bit of a reminder to the Orioles. They had that number 1 pick a few years ago. They had the choice, Adley Rutschman. And this is a little bit unfair because Adley Rutschman is a very good switch hitting catcher, although he stunk the last few months. I don't know if anybody's been watching, but he's been pretty terrible. And I kind of mentioned it to Mike Elias nicely, because their picks have been great. The Orioles have done a great job with drafts. Obviously, Gunnar Henderson is a superb shortstop, and he was picked like number 40 or 50 or something like that. So they got their shortstop. They actually have 2 shortstops because Jackson Holliday is going to be a very good major leaguer as well. But that was probably a little bit of a miss on Bobby Witt Jr. He looks like an all-time great. Adley Rutschman, really good player. He's really slipped a little bit this year, to be fair about it, and a little bit unfair because not easy to get those picks exactly right. Don't know that they're regretting it, but I could see if they were, I wouldn't blame them for regretting the Bobby Witt Jr. I think that was a miss for the Orioles.
Yeah, Gunnar Henderson, 10 picks after the Yankees took Anthony Volpe in that draft. And let's not forget
Anthony
that.
Volpe's not a bad pick, other than if you look at it and you see
Yes.
Gunnar
No, I
Henderson
get it. It's one of their better picks
he's a
of the
starting shortstop,
post
right?
Jeter period for them. He's a very good player with a chance to be better than that. And I think I think ultimately Joey Ortiz plays shortstop next year for the Brewers, and he's a shortstop. They had so many Baltimore, they traded him for Corbin Burns. So that is shortstop you a little bit. John, for my hit or error, I'm going to go with, I guess it's 2 errors. It's hard to believe. Do you know the team that led the majors in both runs scored and ERA didn't make the playoffs? The Diamondbacks averaged 5.5 runs a game and didn't make the playoffs. The Mariners had a 3.49 ERA and didn't make the playoffs and expanded playoffs. I mean, that's hard to do. With the season over, the Diamondbacks owner came out and took a couple of shots at Jordan Montgomery, admitted he's a guy. He messed up. He shouldn't have signed Jordan Montgomery. I mean, the signings of Montgomery and Eduardo Rodriguez, this Diamondback team did win 4 more games than last year when they went to the World Series. And I thought they were better. I mean, Jock Peterson and Randall Grichuk gave him something. Eugenio Suarez gave him something. It was the Montgomery, Eduardo Rodriguez thing. It killed them out of the rotation. If those guys were just okay, they win 90-something games, they might beat out the Dodgers.
Right. I mean, the Mariners, their offense was just terrible. I mean, it was, a little better than the White
Eugenio
Sox.
Suarez, among other things.
Right. I mean, it was terrible. White Sox, they were better than the White Sox and the Marlins. If they were better than somebody else, I didn't notice it. Terrible offense, wasted their pitching. I mean, their goal was to win 54%. They didn't get there, but even if they had won 54%, I'd have to look at it, but I'm not sure that would have gotten them in. I don't think so. So I don't think they should have a goal of a number of wins that will not get you in the playoffs. As far as Arizona, I thought, Ken Kendrick came out, was honest. He said, I'm taking the blame, but everybody took that as a shot on Montgomery. I thought, wasn't he criticizing himself?
Yeah, I shouldn't have done it. It felt like, look, I thought the Mets and Yankees should have gone in on Montgomery when he was available late in spring training. He had come off kind of proving he could handle the biggest games. He had handled workload well for about 4 straight years. This was, like Blake Snell overcame the disrupted start to his year to ultimately pitch. I mean, he's going to get a lot of money now this offseason probably because he was so good. I still believe there's a good starting pitcher in Jordan Montgomery. It went bad. It never got good. I wonder if he was in the best shape for all this, if we're going to hear some of that in retrospect. But it didn't work out. But, John, I still think ultimately the Diamondbacks went to the World Series last year. I think the Mariners are going to have nothing but regret. They've made the playoffs once since 2001. they've had a great, healthy five-man rotation in back-to-back years. I mean, guys who've stayed healthy and pitched well above average, and by the way, have done it at low cost. They have the dream. And if they
Right.
ever got into a short series, they'd have the dream. We saw Scooble, we saw Reagan's, what they could do in a short series. For goodness sakes, John, they're going to look back and say we had the great quarterback on a rookie pay scale, and we didn't take advantage of it for
Yeah.
multiple seasons. I think that organization is lost.
Yeah, I mean, they may regret not trading one of these great young stars. I know it's not easy to do, but I mean, Jerry DePoto's known as a guy who makes as many or more trades than anybody, and they just didn't want to take that chance of trading one of those young pitchers for a young hitter and improving that offense because, frankly, it just was not good enough. Absolutely. And I will say this about Montgomery. He had an interrupt. He got a late start, but he was really good his first two starts. So I don't know that it was his late start. I don't know what it was exactly, but free agency is a funny thing. I was shocked that he did not have the suitors that you would expect. I mean, I know he was kind of waiting for Texas. He loved being in Texas. They had won the World Series. He was a big part of that. He wanted to go back. I get that, but there was really nobody else who was going crazy for him. The Red Sox were willing to do a 4-year deal. The Yankees actually did suggest a 4-year deal.
Yeah.
Deferred, a lot deferred, 4 for 72 million, not worth 72 million. He got a better deal in Arizona, so I get why he did that. And he's going to a team that was in the World Series that he helped beat in the World Series. It's shocking how bad that he was. And obviously Ken Kendrick has some regrets about that. Do you think by saying that out loud about how it was his mistake, and obviously, it was a criticism of Montgomery too. I was only kidding that he was only criticizing himself. Is he trying to convince him not to pick up that $22 million
He's going
investment?
to fail. He's going to fail if that's the thing.
Yeah, he's going to take the 22 million,
he's
right?
picking it up.
Yeah.
I actually think he becomes a tradable player, though. Especially if you're willing to take another salary back or something like that. Because Montgomery
Well,
was
sure.
really good as recently as last year. And we saw teams, notably the Mets, take some gambles on a Manaea Severino. I mean, Severino was as bad last year as Montgomery was this year. And the Mets took a gamble on it, and look at how it paid off. And I do think that Montgomery has been good recently, including in the postseason. I don't know. Once you look at the market and what it might cost, I think a team might say, hey, it's 22. If you take back my guy who's making 10 or something like that, can we make a deal? Because if he were on the free agent market, John, you're much better than me. Does he get 1 at 10, 1 at 12? Probably, what did Severino got 1 at 15?
Yeah, around there, 14 or something like that. Yeah, 13. I think 13 on Severino. Right. It's a buy low thing, but I
mean, it's terrible.
I mean, he also didn't. I personally don't think he helped him. And people could overlook this by whining about the fact he didn't get the contract he was supposed to get. He's going to get $47.5 million for being one of the worst pitchers in baseball. I mean, the world's not that easy. Most people don't get $47 million for stinking. Don't complain about the contract. I mean, I know it wasn't what he was hoping and expecting to get, but he's making more than 99.99% of the people in this country for contributing absolutely nothing this year. So I don't know, if I'm an owner, I'm looking at that and saying, do I want this guy around who's that focused on the money and thinks he's underpaid? I don't know, but you're probably right. On a 1-year deal, you get some of the money down. I'm sure somebody will take him.
Yeah. It will be something you and I will be chasing at some point. You know who's worth the money, John? Tommy Hogan. This isn't an easy show to do this week. Both of us have been moving around. We've been trying to find the spot to do it, and Tommy always helps us get through it. The New York Post Sports YouTube page, give us a view, Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate and review. Playoffs have started. Please continue to stick with us on the show with Joel Sherman and Jon Heyman.